What's up, everybody? What's going on YouTube? It's been forever since I've been on YouTube. Usually do most of the content on Twitch, but now I'm gonna move over to YouTube because I feel like there's a brighter audience. Yeah, so I usually do a bunch of paranormal, supernatural stuff, mainly in the Native community, Native American community. Um, I do everything from paranormal to cryptids and a lot of things, stories about just that type of stuff around native communities, reservations, stuff like that. I do a lot of podcasts and podcast listening. There's a lot of different podcasts I follow and stuff I never heard before, and I'll just play it on here while I play the Call of Duty instead of just listening to it. But I do a lot of reactions to those. And usually I put in my thoughts and my opinions, kind of what we listen to. This one, not so much native. It's just a regular podcast on Spotify. It's called The 4th of July UFOs, Red Eyes in the Dark, and the Sleep Paralysis Files. Don't really know too much about sleep paralysis, but I see it more as a medical condition. I mean, I know it is, but I don't see how that could get too creepy. But yeah, these are just random stories I just wanted to listen to since it's still technically the 4th of July here. Everything's winding down. 10:55 p.m. Hope you guys had a good one, by the way. I was streaming on Twitch earlier and was kind of expressing how us natives we see 4th of July as our peak season for our annual ceremonies, sun dances, ceremonies. Just usually around this time, most tribes will they'll have their doings. So 4th of July for a lot of people, a lot of people in the Indian community, they see it as more of time to go into ceremony. There's ceremonies that happen throughout the year, but I know a lot of tribes that do theirs around this time, or the month of July, late June, mid to late June, into July, somewhere around there. A lot of powwows going on this weekend. I like to shout out a few uh, a few YouTube channels that go live. You guys are interested in watching powwows live. There's a lot of different YouTube channels that go live at powwows. You got Lone TP Productions. Just type in Lone TP Productions. They usually go live at Oklahoma powwows. They go out of state too. Every now and then they'll go out and yeah, we're home this weekend. We're just kicking back. Enjoyed my day off today. Had a good little outing this afternoon and just kind of kicked back today. So this podcast we're gonna listen to is I'm pretty sure they have a YouTube channel or maybe like a social media, but it's called Monsters Among Us. It's on Spotify, and they have a episode here, 4th of July stories. So listen into it. see what it's about. All right, so let's check it out.
Hi, my name is Justin. I currently live in North Carolina, but during my 4 years of high school, I lived up in Minnesota with my parents. They had a house in South St. Paul, which is outside St. Paul, Minnesota. There's a bunch of weird stories about that house, but the weirdest one, well, one of the weirdest ones, there were multiple weird ones. One that comes to mind right away is I had seen what looked like a Native American standing at the top of our stairs. Now, this was back in 2000, maybe 2001. My mom has back issues, and she always needed help vacuuming the stairs. I was home that day, so I got voluntold to help her vacuum the stairs. We always started from the top and worked our way down to the main floor. When we were about three-fourths of the way down, something caught my peripheral vision, and I looked up to the top of the stairs real quick, and I thought I saw a Native American. Looked back down, and then it registered what I saw, so I looked back up, and it wasn't there anymore. I got scared. My mom told that I was scared and turned off the vacuum. What's wrong? I said, I saw a ghost. She was like, no, stop messing around. I'm definitely a kidder, but it definitely wasn't a joke at all. I said, no, seriously. She asked, where? I said, at the top of the stairs. Well, we walked up to the top of the stairs, which was probably 12 steps. When we got up there, there were 2 feet printed onto the carpet. Now, we had just vacuumed that floor, so every other step was that streak you get when you vacuum. I looked at the feet, and I said, those are bigger than my feet. My feet were big as my house. Mom said, well, maybe my best friend Dan, maybe his feet were left here. I said, Mom, Dan hasn't been here in a week. And I put my foot in it, and it couldn't have been my buddy Dan's feet either, because it was about twice the size of my foot. And Dan's was just slightly bigger than my foot. And it just creeped me out. There are many, many other stories that I definitely could share. I don't want to take up all your guys' time, but maybe share down the road. I just started listening to your podcast this past week, and I have dove in. I'm already into the second season, about to go into the third. Just love what you guys are doing. Keep it up. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you, Justin. I've been there, buddy, as I talked about on last week's episode. I have several calls like this, folks seeing a native spirit of one sort or another, which really helps sell the concept of ghosts or hauntings, in my opinion. Because if you can believe that ghosts of pilgrims, colonialists, Civil War soldiers, etc. can exist, or floating around our ether, then you better assume the same for First Nations people as well. After all, their culture had been here for thousands of years before Europeans ever set foot here. So surely there is some remainder there as well. And according to Justin's entry, there certainly is. Great call, Justin. Thank you for taking the time to share it. I love to cook, but sometimes I get busy and it's hard for me to get to the store and plan out meals for the week. And lately I've been trying Green Chef and really been enjoying it.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to think about that one. I didn't expect the story to be about that. Me personally, I don't know if I'd be, I don't know if I'd be, how do you say, creeped out by seeing a ghost of a native. I probably would be, but I just look at that type of stuff differently. You know, I got a different perspective on seeing something like that. You know, I don't know. I honestly feel like I'd be kind of excited to see something like that. A pilgrim, or what did he say? A Civil War soldier? Then yeah, I don't know. That'd be just weird for me. But the reason why I don't think I'd be bothered as far as like seeing the native is only because, you know, seeing something like that of your own, I don't want to say your own culture, but you know, your own type of people, to see something like that would be it'd be it'd be something else to see, you know, to get to witness, kind of like, depending on the apparition, you know, what they're wearing, you know, the type of you know, clothing they had on, and maybe war paint or however they're dressed, because you know, we only see pictures like that. And I mean, I still would be creeped out. I really would, but it'd be amazing to see, depending on the apparition, how clear it looked. You know, if you've seen anything like that of what they're wearing. So you know, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I probably would be creeped out, but I'd be amazed too to see something like that. Depending on, you never know. Where I come from, there's, you know, on the reservation, we have paranormal, we have spirits, stuff like that that haunt, you know, a lot of old buildings, old boarding schools and stuff like that. And that's different. You see what I mean? There's like a whole nother level to that, of the abuse and the murdering and all that, knowing that that happened in that area and seeing that type of stuff. That, you know, it'd be creepy, but I feel like it'd be more sad, depending if you've heard anything. You heard something that's like a little kid playing. For instance, one year, I can't remember the year. I was just a little kid, and I used to live with my grandparents. And one year, my grandpa had told me, "I'm gonna, it's for your birthday. I'm gonna put on a powwow for you." He goes, "Do you want to have a like a regular, you know?" He was telling me like a gourd dance or a regular powwow. And gourd dances are one of my tribal dances that we have, and real popular in Oklahoma. And long story, but it's just one of our dances that we have. He's, or do you want to have a powwow, a competition powwow? I told him I wanted to have a powwow. He goes, okay. And, you know, they put it on for me. And the place where we had the powwow was at one of the old boarding schools that's been closed down since like the late 80s, in a little small reserve from the Cheyenne Arapaho tribe, this little town called Concho, Oklahoma. And I remember when we first showed up before the powwow started, we showed up real early just to get everything set up, open the door, you know, set up our little concession stands and get everything ready for the powwow, you know, get everything set up. And We were there pretty early, and we went to go get the keys from this lady. And when we pulled up, there was a lady already in. She didn't go inside because it was in a gymnasium. It was an old gymnasium, and back in those days, everybody used that gymnasium for just about everything. Back in those days, and when we pulled up, there was a older lady that was waiting to for us to show up so she could give us the keys to get in. Um, she was kind of like taking a nap. She was on a chair, and we pulled up and we got out, and she goes, "Oh, I thought for sure that somebody was already here, and they just got inside somehow." And then we were just like, "No, we just showed up." And she was, "Oh, okay, well, I was just wondering because I heard I heard like kids laughing and playing basketball inside that gymnasium." She said, "Sound like they're having a good old time." And we just all looked at each other like, "No, we just barely got here." And she's like, "Oh, that was kind of creepy." And I remember, thinking to myself, well, because this place has a reputation for being really, really haunted, and this is a boarding school that's been there's a lot of bad history to it, with the Native American boarding schools. My mom went there. My grandparents went there, and a lot of aunts and uncles that went there, and they got countless stories of it being haunted and seeing weird things there. And anyways, yeah, that's what she told us when we pulled up, and was kind of creeped out by it. But I remember my grandpa looking kind of like sad a little bit. He didn't show any type of fear, kind of like, oh, that's creepy. He didn't give it that look because he was more thinking about, I guess like the sadness, all the sadness that kind of comes with that. He didn't see it as being scared. He thought it was sad to just hearing children like that laughing, playing around, and just thinking about all the things that these kids went through. I remember him mentioning that to me as a little kid, and as I got older, I started thinking about it too, and I was just like, dang. So those type of situations, when it comes about seeing a Native American spirit, paranormal apparition, whatever, that's kind of what I was talking about as far as I guess like the situation. But I'm pretty sure to any other person seeing anything like that, they'd be scared. They'd be scared as heck. So I don't know. I didn't expect that type of story for the first one, honestly. But I guess we'll see where this goes. Really trying to play this and talk and listen at the same time. All right.
With about an acre to 2 acres that were cleared. The rest were wood. Places that we didn't think twice about tromping around on in summer, winter, whatever. No concerns about getting snake bit or anything else like that, or even seeing stuff weird. We did have two street lights on the property where our trailer, where we grew up in a single wide trailer, was situated. There were trees and some outbuildings between it and that, so there was some light, but not much. And usually when we got up in the middle of the night, the only thing turned on bathroom light. So one night, my sister gets up. She decides to go get something to drink, and she's walking down the hallway. past my bedroom, then through the living room, and into the kitchen. She goes into the kitchen. She turns to look out the windows there in the kitchen next to the back door of the trailer. And lo and behold, in the window, she sees two red eyes. Now, she has no idea what this is. But at that point in time, she decides to herself, nope, I'm not all that thirsty. So she turns right around and books it right back to bed. Go ahead and fast forward a year or two, and I guess by this time I'm 10 or 11. It's a Saturday night, and I wake up in the middle of the night, and I happen to look up, and again, no lights or anything like that in the room, and I see this face. And the only way I can describe the face is frightening. Hell, it was a face. Of course, this is 40 years ago now, and I'm having trouble really describing it. But it was evil looking. You know, it gave you that feeling of evil. If I think back on it now, than trying just to describe it, the best way I can describe it. I didn't see a body that it was attached to, mind. And for some reason, I went right back to sleep. And I woke up again later on and screamed bloody murder. My mom and dad came in. I think I even woke up my little sister. And they comforted me. And I finally drifted off back to sleep. Of course, I told this to my Sunday school teacher. And she said that it was Satan. One other little interesting fact about our property is you could walk through the woods and you would see, I guess it was about a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile from my trailer. There was an old dilapidated church. And if I remember correctly, it did have a graveyard. That church is almost gone. It's still near the property today. Last time I was there a year ago. And if you traipse through the woods, if you followed these creeks from our property, you know, onto the neighboring property, I have no idea who owned it. It was all woods anyway. And that was behind this old beat up church, this old timber. You would actually come across the baptismal pool there in the woods that was surrounded by 2x4s. It was, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 feet deep, a little bit bigger than your standard bathtub. Now, my sister and I always joked that maybe it was an old possible black church, slave church from back in the day. And somewhere on our property, I don't know where it was, my grandmother would take us out there. And there was an old cabin at one point. There was an old rock chimney. That was all that was left. Now, this property's been sold for almost 20 years. So my sister and I are going to try to go up there later this summer, and talk to the new owners who we know who sold it. We'd like to go up and see what the property's like now, take photographs of it. But that's my little story. I want to say that I love your podcast. I'm pretty much caught up. Thanks, Gary. Have a great day.
Yeah, I don't know. Bigfoot. I got a lot of Bigfoot stories, but only one encounter. Um, God, that's like a whole subject we'd have to really dive deep into when it comes to the Native American, you know, I guess the lore. I guess that's what you would call it, the lore. There's a lot of not origin stories, but there's a lot of stories tied into cultural different tribes, especially up in the northwest of the U.S. to all the way up to British Columbia and Washington, Oregon, northern Nevada, the Sierras, and everywhere around that area. A lot of those tribes up there, they got stories about it. You know, they got a different they see Bigfoot as a kind of like a medicine keeper, somebody who holds a lot of medicine or powerful. It's an ancient being that's been around for a long time. And um, as far as you know, I've heard I've heard different things about Bigfoot from different tribes, just by talking to different people, tribalmen, even elders, or just hearing stories. A lot of one thing that was real interesting to me to hear was the way they thought of Bigfoot, as far as they thought, Bigfoot was kind of like the person, the being that took care of the earth. And they always tell you that Bigfoot, he'll carry like a nasty smell, real bad, like rotting garbage, stuff like that. And I remember hearing that, and we've all heard that story so many times. And anyways, these elders from Washington, tribal elders. I can't remember the tribe, but they explained to these people one time. They said, "Well, we believe, and what we're told is that these Bigfoot, what y'all call them Bigfoot. That's what they said. They called them another word from their tribal language. They told them the reason why he smells that way is because of the way everybody's treating this earth here that we're standing on, all the pollution and the garbage and everything, from the radiation, from just everything, really. The way we're treating it reflects, that Bigfoot. It reflects off of their smell, their attitude, and the way they are, the way they act, why they're, just things like that. And I said, that's the reason why you smell that. Because once upon a time, they didn't smell like that. They're kind of like a protectors of Earth. They took care of the Earth. They're a wild man. They lived amongst the trees, the forest, and the mountains. And before humans really polluted the Earth per se, that I guess they were once more interactive with people. Not so much, but more than what you would see nowadays. Is everybody's. But they say they carry a lot of medicine. They say they carry a lot of medicine. They're more of a supernatural type being. They're spirits. Like, people call them spirits too. Some tribes refer to them as spirits. The way they're able to vanish, and they say they can vanish in thin air and stuff like that. But I always thought that was interesting, hearing that before from a tribal person, an elder. And I've never thought about it that way. I was like, oh, that sure is interesting though. But yeah, that whole Bigfoot thing, and I could go on for hours talking about that stuff. Boy, this game sure is hard to play when you're trying to concentrate and talk. Trying to get this story.
Now, quick warning, there are a few details pertaining to suicide in the following call.
Hello, my name is Jess. I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Big fan of your podcast. My story is actually from about 15 years ago when I was around 8 or 9 years old. I went back and forth between my mom and my dad and my stepmom. My mom lived in Pittsburgh. My father lived in Minnesota. I would go down to his house on holidays and summers. And at this particular time, he had bought a farmhouse, very cheap. No one had lived in it for quite a while. Still had all of the buildings and equipment reminiscent of being a farm home. It had the silos, the barns, an old tractor, all of this old equipment. So we just used farm home. My dad was a truck driver. He wasn't there a lot of the time as well. And one thing about this farmhouse particularly is that it was just weird. You didn't feel comfortable there, and a lot of weird things would happen. Things would go missing and be gone for days, and then all of a sudden you'd find them in another room just sitting on top of the table in plain sight. So you know you would have seen if you would walk past it. We would leave the house, all the windows and doors would be locked. We would come home, and every single light in the house would be turned on. And the first couple of times, my dad thought it was maybe someone messing with us or a burglar. But after it continued happening over and over, he would go in the house, every single door and window would be locked. Our German Shepherd, Keisha, would be laying down peacefully. Nothing was bothered, nothing was disturbed, but every single light in the house would be on. My dad and my stepmom were pretty aware of spirits and spiritual realm. They had things happen to them in their childhood that had made them more open to that experience and that side. So they knew that it was probably haunted. But their opinion of it was, it's just the ghost being mischievous, nothing's being harmful, nothing is malevolent, nothing to worry about. So we would just ignore it. The one thing about this farm home in particular is that my room would be upstairs, and then another bedroom that we used for storage in the bathroom. And my parents' room, the living room, dining room, and kitchen was all on the main floor of the home. And no one liked going upstairs. Me in particular, I hated sleeping in my room. You walked up there and every single hair on the back of your neck would stand up. The air felt thick and heavy. And even though all the lights would be on, it was so dark. You just felt not welcome. And I was actually so scared of going up there that my parents wouldn't make me sleep upstairs. They let me sleep in their room on the floor. They would put a bunch of blankets and pillows on the floor and just let me sleep on the floor next to their bed because I was so scared to go upstairs by myself. And I remember this one particular day, my dad had been working outside, pulling weeds, cutting grass, doing landscaping around the house. My stepmom was inside cleaning, and I wanted to be outside keeping my dad company. And I remember sitting in front of the garage door was up. I was sitting cross-legged like a pretzel in the middle of the garage doorway, staring in the garage, and I was talking to someone. And my dad, who was behind the garage at the time, said that he heard me, and he first chalked it up to me having an imaginary friend or pretending, just doing what kids do. But he said he noticed that the conversation was more intelligent than a couple of kids. It sounded like someone was asking me questions that I was answering. He came around the side of the garage and he continued listening, and I was just having a conversation with this thing. It was asking me who we were, where we were from, why we were here. My dad had come around the corner of the garage and asked me who I was talking to. I looked at him and I said, I'm talking to the blue man. And I pointed my finger in front of me and I turned my head back and there was no one there. And I was very confused because I remember talking to someone and looking at someone, and my dad asked me who I was talking to. And I said, well, there was a blue man. He was standing right there. He was asking me who we were, why we were here, where we were from. And we were just talking. And my dad got really freaked out and decided that was enough outside time for that day. He put everything back in the garage, took me inside and called it a night. A couple days later, I had gotten in trouble. I think I had drawn on the wall or put stickers on the wall or something bad, and I deserved a punishment. So my dad, he never hit me, he never spanked me, anything like that. So my punishment was I had to sleep upstairs in my room for that night. And I was so scared, I just started crying. I was crying for hours. I was so petrified I did not want to go upstairs to sleep by myself. But my dad said, you did something bad. This is your punishment. I had to go upstairs, and I just remember laying in bed, feeling so scared and having the blanket over my head, just feeling something in the room with me. It felt like I was being watched. I couldn't see anything. It was pitch black, but it just felt like someone was staring into the back of my head. At this point, I don't remember much after me laying in bed until after a certain point. I had asked my dad and my stepmom, who had filled the blanks in for me a couple years later, who unfortunately passed now, but they did help me understand and fill in the blanks that I couldn't remember from being a child. And they said that they were in their room watching a movie, and all of a sudden they could hear me talking. And they could hear me through the vents because it was an old farmhouse. You could very easily hear people talking. And my room was actually directly above where their room would have been downstairs. So they muted the TV, and they said they were trying to listen. My stepmom went up to the vent and pushed her ear against it to try to hear what I was saying. But a lot of it was mumbled. She couldn't particularly hear what I was saying. But at the end, she heard me say, "Wait, why? Please don't hurt me." And she ran up those stairs like lightning and busted through my room. I remember almost being broken out of a trance. I remember her opening the door and the light coming in through the hallway. And I was sitting in front of my closet. My closet had a sliding door that you would move over, and it was split open about 6 inches. And I would sit cross-legged like a pretzel directly in front of it. And my stepmom asked me, "Who are you talking to?" I said, "I was talking to you. You were in a blue dress. You were in the closet." I said, "No, I wasn't." "Jessica, who were you talking to?" And I was so confused because I remember thinking that it was my stepmom at the time, but it was a thin white woman, and I don't know how I could see her. It was pitch dark, but I could see her in the closet. She was a thin white woman with black hair, and she was wearing a blue strapless sequin cocktail dress. And she was asking me questions in the closet, and I don't remember what she was asking me. I just remember feeling scared and wondering why my stepmom wanted to hurt me. My mom scooped me up and dragged me downstairs, and I actually slept in their bed in between them that night. At this point, summer was almost over, so I was going to go back to my mom's house soon in Pittsburgh. My dad just let me sleep on the floor next to them for the last 2 weeks I was there, and it was time for me to go home. He explained to me a couple of years down the road when I was asking him about this. At the time, he didn't understand what to do because we weren't religious. He believed in a higher being, but he didn't have any particular religion that we followed that we could turn to. So my dad thought the best thing to do would be to research and figure out what these spirits were, or if they were spirits, or if it was some malevolent thing taking on the body of something. He didn't know. He wanted to figure it out. He didn't want to be left completely powerless. After I had went home, he had called the realtor who had sold him the home. And he told him, look, my daughter's seeing things. She's seeing people. Now they're telling her that they're going to hurt her. And I do not feel safe. I need to know what happened here. I need to know who lived here. And he said the realtor seemed kind of freaked out when he told him what I had seen. But he had explained that the most recent owner of the home was a father and a son. Father was very sick. He had actually died in the house. And his son, who was trying to maintain the farm by himself, wasn't able to do it. I'm not sure if he fell into a depression, but he had committed suicide by hanging himself in our garage. I found out that it had been a few days until anyone had found him. And by the time the cops and everyone had showed up, he was blue and cold. And that was the blue man that I was talking to in the garage. And the woman in the blue dress really scared the realtor because he had seen her too. And at first he chalked it up to just his imagination, and he didn't really think much of it again until my dad brought it up. But whenever he was showing another couple the farmhouse before my dad, said he had come out to give them some privacy to look around the home themselves. He came outside and he looked in his truck, and there was a woman sitting in the passenger seat of his truck. So there was a thin white woman with black hair, and she was wearing a blue strapless sequin cocktail dress. And he said he felt his heart drop to his stomach because it just didn't feel right. And he said, "Who are you? Why are you in my truck?" When the couple came out behind him, he looked behind him, he looked back, and she was gone. So that really freaked him out. But whenever they had finally sold the home to my dad, there was a bunch of old stuff in the attic that had to be removed, that the realtor had agreed with, I think it was the bank or someone, that had to be removed before my dad could bring all the stuff in. Because, like, it was from floor to ceiling full. And the realtor said when they were carrying out all of this stuff, there were certain things that they had set aside that they weren't sure if they should throw away, and they were all in this particular box. And he was looking through them, and it was like jewelry, things of value, things you would either want to donate or not throw away. And he said one thing was a beautiful picture frame that he had picked up, and it was a woman, thin white woman with black hair in a blue sequin strapless cocktail dress.
Yeah, that's creepy. That's that is creepy. Anyways, yeah, that's kind of what we do on this channel. Or well, what we're gonna do. Like I said, I'm usually on Twitch. I do all my videos on there, but I'm trying to get it like a wider audience here on YouTube. So, anywho, shout out to Monsters Among Us on Twitch or not Twitch, Spotify. I'm sorry. Go check them out. They got a lot of good stories on there, and yeah. So, want to wish you guys a happy Fourth, and till next time.